Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock. And this episode of the Non-Essential Podcast is brought to you by the virus infecting your water when you just need a little kick.
It adds flavor.
There's a little pick-me-up.
Spicy virus water.
A little pick-me-up and blast me off the toilet. Thanks.
I don't know if I've learned anything from just watching Society over the last decade. I think you could come out with a toxic or a virulent water, and as long as it was sparkling and had fruit flavor to it, people would drink it.
Yeah,
especially if you made it alcoholic.
Virus is such a bad word now after COVID. I
mean, no, before COVID, it was yay, viruses.
Before then, they probably could have passed it off, but now you just got to call it something else like Vitrons. You know, we've infused with Vitrons.
It reminds me of I listen to the local sports radio channel, and I'm in my car for my 10 minutes a day total. But because it's sports radio, 99% of the commercials are 1,000% targeted towards sportsmen. So out of those, at least half of them are ED, testosterone treatment stuff. And the one today, it was get this Texas number now for a free trial of testosterone or whatever. And it's the only supplement that uses this breakthrough new nutrient, testosterone. And I'm yeah, right. You just happened to find this new ingredient that's just called testosterone to go in your it's you're clearly just making shit up.
We've consulted the Olympic god Testocles to
yeah. I don't know. I love it because it's funny. In the morning, it's all ED and divorce lawyers. And in the afternoon, it's even better because it's divorce lawyers and strip clubs.
I like that they know their what hours.
Know their audience. Yeah. I take that back. In the afternoon, it's strip clubs, divorce lawyers, and the adult, the porn shop.
Yeah. Since I've had to adult ads and shit are always at 2 a.m. it's workout equipment and stuff, and that always bugged me because it's I know what they're trying to do, but it's not gonna work.
You're look, I'm a dude that's awake at 2 a.m. I'm not exercising.
No, this is the time to advertise Doritos. And so,
right?
Because I can I'd love to turn my life around, but this is the depression hour. It's 2 a.m. I'm just playing Call of Duty, getting called various names by people I'll never meet and feeling really bad about it. I don't want to work out. I want food.
Just wait till you hit, I think it was about mid-30s, but now all my targeted ads online are really nice looking shoes and shirts and watches and bourbons and stuff, which it's all stuff that I look at. I'm yeah, that would be cool. But you click on it, it's yeah, this pair of shoes is only $980. It's who the fuck do you think you're advertising to? Here, I wear my shoes, the same pair of shoes, for about 13 years until there's literally just threads left on my feet.
Yeah.
I'm not the guy buying $1,000 shoes, but for whatever reason, the internet's convinced that I'm the guy that buys $900 shoes. So.
I remember feeling really fucking cool when I bought $80 sneakers.
Right.
I was God damn, look at me go.
I think that's about the most. I spent $100 on a pair of running shoes back when I was running 3 miles or more a day, because I know it's worth the investment to have some nice shoes. But then it wasn't a brand name thing. That was a utility. These are running shoes. You still wouldn't look at them and be that guy's cool. I just tried to keep my feet from shattering under my fat frame. But yeah, it's funny the ads that they send, because it's that's never. Around Christmas they kept showing one for the Bourbon of the Month Club and it's it's only $200 a month and we send you a half ounce of expensive bourbon. It's what the fuck?
Yeah, it's no, this is a sampling. It's I don't want a sample. I want to end up in a gutter.
Yeah, it's you're half right. I am a raging alcoholic that likes bourbon, but I'm not spending $200 a glass. I'm spending maybe $20 a month.
It's the asshole at a casino who can just walk through and play one like just go for one thing on the slots. And it's like, wait, what the fuck are you even doing here then? Like,
oh, right. Yeah.
This is where we give up, pal. So,
I love the idea of flying out to Vegas to play one slot. Like, not one machine, like one specific machine, because there's people that do that. They target, you put one coin in or whatever, it's not even coins anymore, but one spin, and you're like, well, that was fun, and you turn around and fly home.
Yeah, it's like you're just saying, look, be a lady, and then, like, fucking, like, you just keep walking. Like, no, you get down, you sit down at the card table with the sharks and let them feed.
Right.
You are chum.
I've pretty much decided, we've talked about it before, since I can't really convince Tara to get excited about, like, seeing Vegas, because I just want, like, I've been there before, and, like, I think she should see it. It's a one-in-a-kind place. It's really cool. But she doesn't have any interest. So, if I ever do get back to Vegas, I'm scratching it as, like, a husband-wife trip and turning it 1,000% into a fear and loathing trip. So that'll be when I've given up on life.
The problem is, like, you're a lightweight. So,
well, that's what's funny, because he describes all the drugs in his
trunk, and I'm like, I had high from one joint and be like, I'm freaking out.
I opened the baggie of edibles and smelled it, and they were good to go. There's demons flying over my head.
They're just like, they're not even like weed baked goods. It's just like little Debbie cakes.
Yeah, Haribo gummy bears. That sugar high had me buzzing.
Finish the fucking story as you're eating like Hostess. Yeah.
And that's exactly what it'd be, but I would enjoy it.
Hey, that's all I need after 30.
And it wouldn't even be some cool-ass convertible, like, muscle car that I rent. It would be a Toyota Corolla. Fucking
a comedian, Dylan Moran, has a really funny joke about, like, shit, at my age, if I want to thrill, I'll just stand up when I don't expect it.
It's not wrong.
So yeah, two old guys are here with you today to tell you stories that you probably already know. But we'll tell them to you in a way that makes you change
us.
Yeah. Changes your whole perspective on us.
The story was kind of interesting, but I fucking want to punch Ben and Steve in the face. That's our goal every episode.
Yeah.
To entertain and create lifelong vendettas.
Planting seeds. I want enemies across this great nation. Let's go. We can do it together.
Well, no, we've made it when you go to some random sit-down restaurant, which you can tell how fancy I am when they're called sit-down restaurants. And, like, the waiter or waitress brings out your food, sets it down, doesn't say anything, just spits on it.
I was going to say, like, Wendy's is technically a sit-down restaurant if you got nothing to do. Like,
yeah. Oh, well, Wendy's is pretty fine dining, in my opinion.
Wendy's is good.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, random stories each week. I've got one this week.
That's good.
Need an introduction.
You're batting 1 for 1 this week, then.
So, Douglas Hedgal was born on September 3rd, 1946, and he grew up in the small town of Clark, South Dakota. He was quoted as saying that he'd never been further east than his uncle's Dairy Queen stand in Glenwood, Minnesota, nor farther west than his aunt's house in Phoenix, Arizona. Which is supposed to be, like, highlighting that, like, Douglas was a bit of a country bumpkin who never really left his, like, rural roots.
Yeah.
But I looked it up because I was like, well, that sounds like a pretty good
far.
radius.
Like...
Yeah, from Glenwood to Phoenix and where he's from is closer to Glenwood, but it's in the middle of the two because they're both opposite directions, clearly. But from Glenwood to Phoenix, that's a 1,600-mile radius that spans basically the entire middle of the country.
Like, the problem with that is, like, you went just far enough to not get anywhere.
Well, and I think, like, what they basically mean is, like, this country boy has never been to New York or L.A. because those are the only two places that you can see.
I mean, I would rather be in Phoenix than L.A.
Yeah, and that's really not a compliment to Phoenix.
Nah, Phoenix is... It's just... I mean, it's all desert, but L.A. is, like, desert with, like... They fooled themselves.
Yeah, I think Phoenix's problem isn't the city. It's that it's like in the middle of like America's oven. It's just fucking hot.
Yeah, it's. I mean, but that's changing though. Like, you know,
that's true.
Now America is America's oven. Some months
and icebox. It just depends what day you're looking at.
Totally.
Like tomorrow, like tonight, is supposed to get down to 7 degrees, and the tomorrow's high is like 20, and then Tuesday it's supposed to be 60.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck are we doing? Neither of those are normal temperatures for beginning of February, but
totally. Okay, anyway. So he's
country bumpkin.
He's only been mostly across the country.
Yeah, minus my like flights that we went out to Vegas like 2 or 3 times.
He just hasn't seen the ocean, basically.
Right. So, anyways, as the story goes, because of this, when a military recruiter approached the country bumpkin Doug with the prospect of enlisting and seeing the world, Doug jumped at the opportunity.
It's like Forrest Gump.
Right. And you hear that a lot. And in fact, I was just listening to something recently talking about how the military still targets these like low income areas because they know that they can try to lure them with the prospect of like see the world. Mm-hmm. It's like, who by now hasn't figured out that it's like see the world as you're ducking behind shit because people are trying to shoot and blow you up.
I mean, like, I think a long time ago, people kind of saw through that shit. Like, you know, it's kind of just, it's the war economy. Like,
yeah,
that is
well, that's the thing
are.
too. I heard him like talking about it in modern day, and I think they do still use the see the world line, but I think it's more about you're dirt fucking poor and you'll get a paycheck.
Literally, the advertising for the military now is literally like, you like Call of Duty, right? You're dumb as fuck. Go get them. And like,
how would you like the calliest of duties that there is?
And I watch pro Call of Duty, so I see the people they're fucking advertising to, these fucking kids, and they're dumb as a stump, and some nitwit's like, let's appeal to them to operate a drone. Mm-hmm. It's like, fuck, man, we're so screwed.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not shitting on people that do sign up for the military or serve in the military. I'm shitting on the military establishment and their political climate behind it.
Yeah.
I don't think you're wrong if you choose that path necessarily, depending on your reasons.
I think you're a victim of a society that makes victims of us all. Like,
which is why they're so rabid about making sure people don't get out of the station where they need to join.
Totally.
I've literally heard them make that argument. It was, well, if we give everybody education, nobody will join the military. It's like, well,
good.
Anyway,
you're telling me if people are smart, they'll want to fight less
and live.
Wow.
All right. So anyway, he decided it sounded good, and he joined the Navy and attended boot camp in San Diego in 1965. So finally saw the coast, and one of the nicest areas that, from what I've heard, climate-wise anyway, to see the coast. So 1965, at the age of 19, he's in the Navy and boot camp. About 2 years later, on April 6th of 1967, Douglas was stationed aboard the USS Canberra when a blast from the ship's guns knocked him overboard.
From his own ship's guns?
Yep.
Yep. Sounds like a design flaw.
Yep.
If it can fucking buck you off.
Or terrible user error. I don't know. They don't explain.
What the fuck are these, like cannons, like revolvers? Like they fucking
It was, I know you're not the biggest Simpsons guy in the world. It wasn't the ship's gun. It was a t-shirt cannon, like the whole like Maud Flanders death thing. They were all on the upper deck, and they were giving out a free Navy t-shirt.
The shirt goes nowhere, but it blasted him fucking off.
Yeah. Whoa. The best part, though, is it knocked him overboard, and apparently nobody noticed, or if they did, they didn't say anything for 2 days.
Popular dude.
Right. Since he was now adrift in the Gulf of Tonkin, 3 miles off the coast of Vietnam, without a life preserver, mind you, the Navy assumed he had perished, and they held a memorial service for him, which I'm guessing nobody showed up for. If nobody bothered to report him gone.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know. It's fun. You can easily make fun of it, but on a big ship, it is very possible that it took people a while to be like, wait a minute, where's this guy? Like, I'm assuming there's busy schedules of stuff.
It would probably piss me off a lot if I got knocked overboard at the one spot on the ship where nobody could see it happen.
But what's interesting to me, well, I guess, yeah. Well, yeah. So they held a memorial service for him. Luckily for Douglas, he was in fact very much not dead. Because 12 hours after going overboard, he was found by a Cambodian fishing crew who took him aboard. So, like every fucking cartoon and TV show you've ever seen. Well, guess what, bitch?
You're gonna see the world now.
Mm-hmm.
Grab a rod.
No, not really, because what they did is they took him to shore and, less luckily for him, turned him straight over to the Vietnamese militia.
Okay. Grab whatever they make you grab.
Yeah, your ankles probably, but Douglas was taken to, I'm going to say this wrong, Lowell prison, which is probably more commonly known as Hanoi Hilton, one of the worst POW camps like of that era. Unlike all those other like plush POW camps that you hear about.
Sucks, man. Like if you're gonna be a prisoner of war, like you want that to, like, if that's gonna happen in battle, like I don't want my own gun knocking me into the enemy camp. God damn it! Like fuck.
Right. Like, so it's probably not hard to imagine this, but the guards did not believe Douglas's story that he was knocked overboard by his own guns.
Yeah.
They were sure he was a CIA agent.
Totally. That's, we thought the best entry point was a fucking fishing boat and walking up to you.
Right. That's what I literally in my notes I put, because they were insistent that you're a CIA agent.
Yeah.
And so they apparently believed we were just setting CIA agents adrift in the ocean, hoping they'd make their way.
You remember Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake comes down and walks into a village and says, "Hey, what are you up to?" Like,
yeah. I'm just picturing us like going off the coast of Vietnam and like messages in a bottle. You know how you send those adrift hoping they get somewhere? It's just doing that with agents.
Yeah, like he's
good
like,
luck, soldier.
Like it couldn't be more like. Is their idea of a CIA agent like a guy who like drives in on a fucking chopper with a leather vest and a fucking American flag attached to the back of it? Like that's how we're gonna invade?
Anyway, they didn't believe him, and they began to try to pry information from the soggy soldier, but soon discovered that he was little more than a simpleton, which would make sense if your story with "my own gun knocked me overboard."
Yeah. Damn boat wobbled.
That's all pretty fishy.
You guys got mermaids here?
I tried to piss over the side and the damn cannon fired and scared me. I only have seen cornfields growing up. What do you want from me? Anyway, getting POWs to write and or film or, record anti-U.S. propaganda was a common tactic. So that's what they were kind of trying to do. You'd get soldiers to write these pieces that they'd publish saying, Vietnam's not so bad and they're treating us well.
Yeah.
But they soon discovered
fucking swamp ass 24/7. What a great
food's too spicy.
What a great humid hell.
Food's too spicy for my bland American Caucasian palate. But other than that, this is a paradise. But they quickly discovered he could not read or write. They thought that would make him a perfect...
We have the most useless, bumbling soldier.
Well, they thought that would make him a perfect candidate to, trick him into becoming a public supporter for their cause, because they're like, this guy's an idiot. Like, we can convince him to honestly, be a mascot, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So... they assigned somebody to teach him how to read and write, but after all those attempts to educate him failed, they just kind of gave up in exasperation. Like, God, this guy is fucking stupid.
No wonder they recruited him.
In fact, they officially dubbed him the Incredibly Stupid One, which probably sounds a lot cooler in their language. But
what if this was all a farce? Like, and he just played like the dumbest man possible for like favorable treatment. Like, that's a tactic. They're probably going to torture you anyway. Sure. So if they believe you're as dumb as a stump.
Well, what it did do is they deemed that he was so stupid that he was not really any kind of threat. And he was basically given free reign of the prison. He was like their little, like, look at this simpleton. Yeah. Oh. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, but in this case, that's not the case. Because you exactly hit it. Not only had Douglas faked his ignorance entirely, but he had a bit of an eidetic memory and just a lot. He was very, like, cunning.
I thought you were going to say he was actually a CIA agent.
Yeah, take that. But no, he was actually very smart. That's what, I wanted to paint the first day. And that's kind of why when the story gets told, it starts with the country bumpkin thing. It makes it more believable that he's a simpleton. He wasn't. And I'll point that out 3 times because the guy's still alive. So if he's listening, I don't think you're stupid.
I might. We still haven't. Well, yeah, we're not to the end of this. You fell off your own boat. Come on.
Well, yeah, there is that. And if you do hear this, please call us and like give us or tweet us.
Explain yourself at 1-800.
Yeah, I need to be able to picture this. So he was given the task of sweeping the prison grounds, and he used his time and lack of scrutiny to do whatever he could to like work against his captors. He'd often pass notes and information between other prisoners.
It's like, do you like me? Yes or no?
At some point, I don't know if this was all at once. I imagine this is more over the course of his time there, because you do it all at once, it would make it even more obvious. But he was able to like ruin 5 military vehicles by like putting leaves and dirt in the gas tanks when nobody was looking, because they just give him access to vehicles.
I love the fucking design of gas tanks and vehicles. Like, they haven't gotten any better either. Like,
no, they're like, for the love of God, put nothing but the exact type of gas in here.
How did it blow up the car? How did it blow up? I put a single mini marshmallow in there. Like, they're so fragile.
Yeah, and they're like, well, we could put this kind of screen mesh to try to at least keep foreign objects out, but that would be a pain in the ass. So I'm sure there's actually a reason that they don't. But yeah, it seems like I said, it's, if you know anything about vehicles, it's put basically anything other than gas in there, and there's a good chance you're permanently fucking up the vehicle. Yeah. And then in order to get to the gas tank, it's just a tube. Like, here you go. He convinced the prison guards that he needed glasses, and when he was taken to the optometrist, he was able to memorize the route to and from, the prison to the actual city of Hanoi. But probably most impressively, Douglas had the ability to remember the names, dates of capture, and other personal details of basically all the soldiers coming in and out of the POW camp. And he did have help on it. It wasn't just him. Obviously, when you're American soldiers all stuck in the same soldier camp, you're kind of coordinating your efforts at like still clinging together. But
I would fuck it up because I wouldn't be like in on it, and I'd be like, yeah, so I'd blow up his spot out of jealousy. I'd be like, he's fucking faking.
That's not what my note said, Douglas.
He should be eating shit with us.
Yeah. Multiple things, I didn't put this in my notes, but multiple things I read said like the way that he'd memorize all this stuff was using a mnemonic, and I'm like, I've heard of like that being a very good technique for people. It doesn't fucking work at all for me because I have to remember the mnemonic. So you're just adding something to remember for me.
I wouldn't be successful at all in this role because long ago I adopted the philosophy of if it's worth remembering it, I'll remember it. And, right. And if it's not, I'll forget it.
That was my exact approach to like everything in school too. Like, I would take notes sometimes, but I would never refer back to the notes. It was more of a, maybe if I write this down, it'll stick in there a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they said he used a mnemonic, but they pointed out that he used a mnemonic. Old MacDonald had a farm. And I'm like, wait a minute. Again, I'm going to need further explanation than that, but no further explanations given. So like I picture he was walking around, and it would really feed into his simpleton persona if he's just like, old MacDonald had a farm. And then it's like, and on that farm he had Dan Smith, August 37th or 37th. Yeah. August 3rd, 1969 from Wyoming, they'd be like, that's a weird song he's singing. But somehow he memorized most of this information, which, at first glance might not seem that important. But it does become very important. So in 1969, the North Vietnamese, and I'm probably oversimplifying or butchering the history of this here because I'm stupid, but the bad guy Vietnamese, which was the North, decided to release 3 soldiers as part of a propaganda campaign. Though they had been keeping the names of the soldiers that they had secret, like people knew that they had prisoners, but they wouldn't it's kind of customary normally to say like, hey, we've got this guy so that the other side knows that they're still alive. And they weren't doing that at all. Yeah. That was starting to hurt the Communist Party's so great party line. Like people, even their own people were like, this is kind of shitty.
Which is really funny to me. Not that that's not wrong, but just it's that rules of war type shit where it's like you are being totally unbearably cruel to each other. But you need to tell us who you have. It's like they still have them, and you still have theirs. So,
and I think what hurt them more is because they don't fucking care what we thought of them. But when you're trying to convince, because their whole thing was trying to convince the people of Vietnam that their way of life was better and that they were the better people, and that the other ones, like a lot of times you try to paint the other ones as like the heathens and they're ruthless and whatever. So when people were like, wait, this is what you're doing to people that you haven't, so basically it was just bad publicity. So things that already,
it's that was like Abu Ghraib and shit,
Well, sure. Like that would have never changed except for we start looking at it and you get enough people who are like, wait a minute, you can convince the people, and that's how these governments get away with shit for so long, as you convince your people that you're the righteous side. And as we've learned when you look at history, is usually there's not one good side. There's a winning side and a losing side, and then one convinces, they're usually both kind of shitty.
And each one had a PR team.
But the only way to make that work is to keep your side thinking that you're the good side. Yeah. So that's what's going on here, basically. That was a long explanation. But as part of a PR campaign to be like, look, we're not monsters, they decided to release 3 soldiers. And Douglas was one of the ones chosen. He had made a pact with some of his other soldiers, or all the soldiers, whatever. They had said, I'm not leaving here without the rest of you. So he didn't want to go. But his commanding officer knew that, given what he had access to and what he knew, it was very important that he, makes it home. Yeah. So it kept saying his commanding officer told him to leave, which was weird to me. It makes sense, but I never imagined being in a POW camp and still having somebody you consider a commanding officer. Right.
You haven't been to prison, my friend.
Or in the military.
Everyone answers to someone.
Yeah. So after being returned, Douglas, of course, relayed his information to the U.S., which let the military confirm the identities of a number of soldiers who had been listed as either MIA or KI, missing or killed in action, but who were actually alive and being held captive. And of course, he was able to talk about the torture that was methods being used, and probably most importantly, where the fucking POW camp is. At least his. I don't know if he had gleaned the information on the others, but, it was very important information. And then during the Paris peace talks in 1970, the U.S. brought him to speak publicly to confront the Vietnamese in front of a global audience, bringing to light all this secret POW stuff.
Like a sports debate show.
Pretty much. So in the wake of this information becoming public on a global scale, the Vietnamese were forced to at least keep alive I said hundreds, it was probably thousands. I don't know how many POWs they had. That would have taken an extra 30 seconds to Google. I didn't do that. But basically, there's a lot of soldiers that they probably would have just killed because they knew the U.S. assumed that they were dead already. That they were like, well, fuck, now we got to keep them alive. So if you were one of those soldiers, that's very good news.
Yeah.
And also, I just can't imagine like how good that would be for all the families that had assumed that their loved ones had, they've been told that they died over there, and then like, oh, just kidding. They're only being tortured.
Yeah, they're only in the worst
which sounds ridiculous.
Camp. Yeah.
But yeah, at least they're alive, which is great news unless you've remarried already. Then it's awkward.
Yeah.
So there were like another number of other conditions working in concert to help rescue the American POWs. The U.S. had already led a raid on Son Tay prison camp, which showed the Vietnamese that the U.S. would certainly use deadly force and send, throw waves of people at them to rescue their soldiers, which I don't know what they fucking thought, that they would just be like, meh. Although I wouldn't put that past government sometimes.
No, that's true. Yeah. Again,
so they were like,
PR.
Oh, all right. Also, by this point, Ho Chi Minh had already died. And so a lot of the torture and execution of soldiers had already slowed. They kind of gleaned or reverse engineered they think that he was the one personally ordering most of the torture and execution. So once he was dead, whoever assumed control afterwards was like, I'm not as big a fan of doing this.
I just sort of inherited this job. I really wanted to craft.
I originally signed up to be a cook in the military. I don't know how I got fucking promoted to leader of this.
I'm not much of the torture kind. I'm more into whittling.
Yeah. So there were certainly a lot of other things that went towards rescuing the POWs that were rescued. There were plenty that were never rescued. But Douglas's contributions were as important as any, especially to the soldiers and families of the soldiers, like I said, that were presumed killed or missing. So that's really kind of the end of the funny, not funny, but the non-essential part of the story. I just loved this guy being like so good at acting stupid that they're like, this guy's just, we'll call him the fucking idiot soldier and let him walk around without chains. And it turns out it's like, no, he's not dumb. And a better actor than me, because there's no way I could have pulled that off.
Believe me, you could pull that off.
Yeah, that's true. I just act myself, and they'd be like, I just like, by the way, have you heard my podcast?
Convince a bunch of people you're a nitwit? Here's episode 1.
Hey, now, I think it took at least 2.5 episodes to really hammer that point home. But he did go on to teach survival, evasion, resistance, and escape at the Naval Air Station North Island facility in San Diego, which probably didn't even have to like turn in a resume for, because they're like, yeah, this guy knows what he's doing, except for like, don't teach him battleship.
Yeah, it's like the end of The Martian where like Matt Damon's like a professor afterwards, like, yeah, you just get to talk about space now because you were in.
Yeah, don't talk to him about getting back like on the ship before it leaves without you, but you get to talk about surviving. Yeah,
timeliness is not going to be like you're going to be 15 minutes late for every class. Those rooms are going to be empty.
Yeah,
but you can talk when you get there.
I imagine his classes are like, normally it's like, from 8 to noon, and it's like his class is from 8 or 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock to noon. It officially says that.
Yeah, every time you miss like the bus, you have like a fucking flashback and like have to go lie down. Cause...
that was a weird movie. It's the kind of movie I watched. I'm like, I think I like it and hate it.
I liked it.
Yeah, it's just a little too...
It was like they tried to make it too dramatic at points.
Yeah,
because it's just a silly fucking like he's growing shit potatoes. Like, why aren't we having fun with that? Why isn't that Adam Sandler playing that?
Oh, I shit my potatoes. He starts singing a song. He pulls out a guitar from nowhere. But. Yeah, it clearly had its like Oscar bait parts, but like I said, I didn't hate it. It was a decent movie, but anyway. So yeah, he went on to teach that class until he retired from the Navy at some point. It didn't say it. It doesn't matter. But like I said, as far as I can tell, anyway, he's got his own Wikipedia entry, and it doesn't list a death date, and neither did Google. So I think he's still kicking around out there.
And he's right behind you.
Maybe all these people that I run into on an everyday basis that I'm like, these people are so fucking dumb. They're all pulling the Douglas Hedgal on me. They're like, ha! Now Steve won't suspect a thing.
You know what Douglas did for the first 15 years? Counterintelligence. There is no Douglas.
But he seems pretty cool, pretty smart dude. And my favorite, like, one of my favorite anyway, like wartime, like, you're in a bad spot technique. So, we've talked about guys that basically turn into like bloodthirsty samurais that charge into battles against Nazis with swords. Yeah. We've talked about women that just go out and buy a tank at like Tanks R Us and wage war. There are a lot of cool stories about people doing weird things in war, but I liked I'm going to play dumb. Yeah. And it working so fucking well.
I would give it a shot. Like, fuck. For day one, I just like piss on my own feet and go, ah.
Not again.
Dang it.
The thing is, it seems funny too, and you're like, oh, clearly that's a good tactic. It's like, well, it worked, but there's a 50-50 chance they'll be like, this fucker's so stupid, let's just shoot him.
Yeah, well, that could be better too. Like,
that's true.
You're either going to be like the clown of the party, like you'll be the jester, or they'll fucking end it there. And I'd probably be cool either way.
Yeah, but I just know if I ever ended up in a POW camp, which I won't because no military wants me. Yeah. But in a situation like that, and I'd be like, yeah, I don't want to waste away to nothing and die like of a terrible disease and starvation. Just kill me now, and they would. Then the next day, the camp would get liberated. It'd be like, well, my ghost would be sitting there like, fucking.
I would do that shit where it's like, just immediately just like fold and be like, no, I'm with you guys now. Like,
you know what would happen to me? It'd be almost a Shawshank Redemption thing. I'd manage to like bury into a tunnel, and they'd be like, Steve crawled through a tunnel of the foulest, stinkingest shit, but it was designed in a circle, so he just kept going round and round.
I would draw like my own poster on the wall of a beautiful woman, but it's just a stick figure.
With boobs.
Yeah,
circle boobs.
Yeah, it's like to try to hide the hole.
So anyway, he's out there somewhere. So if you're listening and you happen to know him, buy him a beer or two on us. Ben will pay you back through Venmo or something. He's good for it.
I won't do a fucking thing. I will deny I ever did this show.
He'll play dumb.
Yeah, I'll play. I've learned from the master.
Right. Touche. It's interesting. How would you try to prove somebody isn't
for food because you're too stupid?
No, that's easy. Yeah. How would you try to prove somebody isn't like illiterate and dumb? Like if you're like, no, I think you can read. Like that seems like a very easy thing to fake.
Maybe this might be bad, but like, I don't know why my mind goes to the most evil thing. But you like pretend they got a personal letter from back home, and
that's true.
And it's got something tragic written on it,
or a pardon from Ho Chi Minh himself or something.
Yeah.
So I guess there's some things you could do.
You could do it. You could pull it off. But sounds like Douglas was committed to the role. I'm surprised he didn't become an actor.
Yeah. I was going to say, I want to make a movie out of this, but I just remembered I did see that they did an episode of Drunk History on him.
Yeah.
Which is probably fantastic because I love the story anyway, but it's the kind of story if you tell, well, most of these stories that like we do or anybody does are 1,000% better if you're just like barely. Yeah. I mean, I've only watched a handful of episodes of that show, but they're great. And the people on them by like not even the midway point of the story aren't just drunk. They're like barely awake anymore.
Yeah, like they really embrace the like goal of that show, where it's just like fucking like they go back to being 15 again, where it's like there's just no restraint. Like, I got to make sure I'm really tore up for this show. And then like 10 minutes in, they're throwing up.
Yeah. You're telling a story and then you fall asleep for like 45 seconds and wake up and don't realize it and just keep going.
But you got to have
nobody
that.
else in the...
Like, yeah. Because it's not entertaining to just be slightly buzzed and, you know, slightly slur your words. Like, you need that fucking depressed alcoholic, like, trail off. Like, that's what makes those tellings work.
So the Navy thought Douglas was dead. And then, like, 3 minutes later, it's just you're like seeing them with their eyes barely open. And 3 minutes later, but he wasn't dead.
But he wasn't.
And I'm 100%, and I think we said it before. I'm pissed off that they came up with that idea because I would 1,000%. I would love to do that kind of show, but I won't now because they did it. So now you're just a copycat. But I think me and you could nail a fucking drunk history podcast.
I mean, I would be surprised if I hadn't done it in our 200-something episodes.
That's true.
Like, they haven't all been sober. Surprisingly, most of them have been.
Yeah. But there have been. I guess I will admit that there's been shows where it's my story time and I'm having a drink with it. It's never more than one because I'm down in my basement. So if I finish it, I'm fucked. I'm not out of alcohol until I'm done. I've never brought like a bottle of liquor downstairs with me to refill, but I
really do want to bring like an ice chest into my room and like just have that ready to go.
I used to want to get one of those like little mini fridges to stock with alcohol. I don't need it now.
Another 100 episodes will have official non-essential podcast beer dispensing helmets.
Yes. And we'll have to go back to doing the show via Twitch though, so you can like see the beer dispensing.
Yeah.
We won't. I would 100% do that too. Like you angle the camera because nobody wants to see my fucking face. I don't think my wife wants to see my face, but you angle the camera up so you just see my forehead and the beer hat. Yeah. And I'll use clear containers so you can watch the beer level going down just to prove we're drinking it. But yeah, I've totally had episodes where I was slurring by the end, but not to the like drunk history about to pass out point.
Yeah.
Which is good because at 40 and we record on a work night,
you could die.
That would be well, I could die, and even if I didn't die, it'd probably end up costing me my job because I'd quit showing up to work every Friday morning. Or you'd show up and be so incredibly... The other night I decided to have 2.5 drinks because I didn't finish my third drink instead of like one drink, like a responsible, adult. And I was so fucking hungover the next day, like just that, like not the like gonna puke hungover, but there's like that constant background headache. Yeah. It's like there's 2.5 drinks. What the fuck? Yeah. So the moral of this story, kids, if you're listening, if you're young, drink the fuck up because when you get old, the only way that works is if you become a really sad alcoholic.
Yeah, you will. You will fall off. Time is undefeated, and that goes for champions and alcoholics.
Actually, the hope is actually that you fall off because, I know some...
Even Tom Brady had to retire, fuckers. So
allegedly. We'll see. I won't believe it until like 2 or 3 seasons have passed and he hasn't come back.
No, because everybody's so like excited that like he did it again. But like I've like had to explain to him, like, no, you don't understand. Now he's going to be on Fox, and you're going to have to hear him talk every Sunday. Like
for a year. I don't think he'll last much longer than that.
What's his analysis going to be? Like, yeah, this reminds me of the time I threw a 15-yard slant that they never defended. Like, fuck. There's your fucking football moment.
He'll watch one game and a quarterback will get sacked. He's like, wait, you're allowed to hit quarterbacks?
Like, when did they change that? That should be a penalty.
Yeah. There's always a penalty when I played. I don't understand. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know what about Tom Brady has ever screamed. He's got a lovable media personality. But
yeah, it's just that thing. Like, you want to like market like athletic greatness, but 9 out of 10 like great athletes are very fucking boring people. Like,
yeah,
like Michael Jordan's the most interesting one, and it's like because he's like almost a demon. Like he almost like came out of a genie lamp just to like fuck with the world. Because he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna be better than everyone.
But yeah,
like he's like a dude who like we're still not convinced. Like he could probably work like do a training program for 3 months and then just shut down LeBron. Like that's just. But other than that, it's like you got Brady, you got like they tried to like pitch like fucking what's his face, the bicyclist,
Lance
Armstrong before the oh no, steroids. This is something to make riding a bike interesting. Oh no.
That whole thing was interesting to me in a non-interesting way because everybody's like, "Oh, he's so good." I'm like, I don't fucking care. It's bike riding.
Yeah, it's like don't.
And then they're
pretend,
like, he cheated.
Don't pretend like, you cared about it. Like,
yeah,
no one gave a fuck what he won at the time.
A lot of that. If you're into cycling, I get it fine because I'm not going to crap on you for being into like a niche sport when I follow American soccer.
Fair point.
But if you're out, anybody that's not a cyclist, or, you know, just specifically into cycling in general, because there were a lot of people that couldn't tell you shit about cycling, but were like, Lance Armstrong. Well, that was like 100% that, like, the American exceptionalism people that were like, fuck yeah, USA. It's like,
yeah,
I really don't care if we're the best in the world at riding bikes.
Yeah.
And so when it came out that they're like, oh, he's actually kind of a piece of shit and he was cheating. And it's like, I still don't care because I didn't care about the sport.
And the sport just needs work. Like, I don't want to watch cyclists civilly race in like a straight line and try to get like a wind boost and shit.
Yeah, give them like chains and pipes to beat each other with.
Yeah, right. I want a pipe in their goddamn wheel axle.
Like if you've ever played the old Road Rash games when they like weren't shitty.
Yeah.
They were still shitty, but they were new, so interesting.
A narrow pathway, like that's the perfect time to pull a bowling ball out of your bag and whip it behind you.
Or at least courses where you've got those kind of bridges where like after 3 people go across them, it just drops out. So if you're
yeah, I want trials. Okay.
Yeah.
And then like once we make it a contact sport, like, then we can talk about, like, steroids and shit. Other than that, it's like, oh, he pumped harder. I don't give a shit.
Right. Look at those calves. I'm like, yeah, that's gross.
Yeah, you're fucking, he's weird. He's like, fucking, it's like a fucking cheap chicken at the fucking butcher shop. Like, what?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's your Sports Corner Minute on the Non-Essential Podcast.
We need an official sound like stinger for our Sports Minute. Something like that. A Non-Essential Sports Minute.
I would love to get sued just for that one as sound effect. Like some fucking...
Especially if we did it a cappella like that, but we just happened to like completely nail
Excuse me, cease and desist. We own
from Dick and the Wolf, Morning Wolf Dick Show. That's our
All right. So yeah, well, thanks for listening. We'll talk again. Bye.
That sounded like a threat.
We will have meetings.